Strength is not somewhere out there, it already lives inside you. This reality changes the entire way you see yourself and your circumstances, because it means you are not an empty vessel waiting for someone to pour power into you. You are already equipped. When life comes with its pressures and its storms, you are not standing unarmed on the battlefield. You are standing with an arsenal already deposited inside your spirit. Too many people spend years searching for strength in other people's approval, in titles, in possessions, in emotions, but strength does not originate in those things. It originates from a source far greater, a source that has already placed in you everything you need to face and overcome. If you believe you are empty, you will live like you are empty, but if you know you are full, you will begin to act like a person who carries more than enough to handle whatever comes. This internal strength is not something you can earn by performance or acquire by begging. It has been gifted to you so that you can stand firm and move forward in the face of resistance. Think of a seed hidden under the ground. On the surface it looks small and powerless, but within that seed is all the genetic coding for a tree. The power to break through the soil, to reach for the sky, to produce fruit. All of it is already contained inside that tiny shell. It does not need someone to bring power from the outside. It simply needs the right environment to activate what is already within. In the same way, you carry the capacity for strength. The pressures you face are not there to crush you, but to activate what is hidden inside. When the seed pushes through the soil, it is using the power that has been there all along. When you push through adversity, you are drawing on a strength that has been there all along. This is why you cannot measure your future by how you feel in a moment of weakness. Feelings are temporary, but strength is a resident force. You may feel tired, discouraged, even overwhelmed, but underneath those feelings there is a core of power that cannot be erased. It sits there waiting for you to acknowledge it, to stir it up, to speak to it. Words have a way of stirring what is dormant. When you speak what you believe instead of what you feel, you are tapping into that resident power. You are saying, "I may not feel strong, but I know strength lives in me." This is not denial, it is alignment with the greater reality. Because strength lives in you, you do not have to chase after people to validate you. You do not have to lean on shifting circumstances to stabilize you. You do not have to wait for the right mood to do what you are called to do. The power is present now. It has an address, and that address is your own heart, your own spirit, your own inner man. The sooner you begin to identify yourself as someone who already has it, the sooner you begin to live differently. You lift your head differently. You walk differently, you speak differently. You face obstacles not as a victim trying to survive, but as a carrier of strength moving forward with purpose. Strength inside you also means you are not limited by what others say you can or cannot do. People may underestimate you, mislabel you, or even oppose you, but their words cannot change what has been deposited within you. When you know strength is inside, you do not collapse under criticism or rejection. You become like that seed again, pushing through the dark soil of misunderstanding, because you know there is light above waiting for you to emerge. Your roots go deep, because the deeper your roots, the stronger your stand. This inner power grows as you feed it with truth, with faith, with consistent action. Living from the strength within requires a shift in identity. You stop identifying with weakness, with lack, with fear, and you start identifying with the power and authority already given to you. This does not mean you ignore challenges, but it means you approach them from a different posture. You stop thinking, "If only I had more strength," and start thinking, "I already have what I need to stand, I just need to draw it out." You may not have seen yourself this way before, but the moment you start, things begin to change. Your language changes first, then your decisions, then your outcomes. Strength inside you also brings stability. External things will always fluctuate: finances, jobs, relationships, public opinion. If your sense of power is tied to those fluctuations, you will ride an emotional roller coaster. But when you anchor yourself in the truth that strength resides within, you remain steady regardless of the outer climate. Storms may rage, winds may blow, but a tree with deep roots does not topple easily. You can be that tree firmly planted, because the roots of your strength go down deeper than any surface level change. Another dimension of recognizing the strength within is understanding that it is active when you act. You cannot sit passively and expect inner power to automatically manifest. It flows as you move, it multiplies as you use it. Like a muscle, it develops through use. The more you step out, the more you speak truth, the more you take action aligned with what you believe, the stronger it becomes. People often wait for confidence before they move, but confidence comes as you move. You already have the raw material inside, movement shapes it into visible power. Because strength is internal, it is also personal. It looks different for each person. For one, it may manifest as quiet resilience, for another as bold speech, for another as extraordinary patience under pressure. Do not compare your expression of inner strength with someone else's. Focus on cultivating what is already in you. Feed it, guard it, speak over it. Make choices that align with it. When discouragement tries to settle in, remind yourself, this is not the truth of who I am. Strength lives in me. This self-reminder is not hype, it is a way of bringing to the surface what is true. When you accept that strength is already present inside you, you also stop waiting for perfect conditions to begin. You stop saying, when I feel ready, when I have more resources, when the timing is better. You begin where you are, with what you have, because you understand that everything necessary for the next step is already residing within you. You move from a place of deficit thinking to abundance thinking. You stop seeing yourself as a person trying to get to strength and start seeing yourself as a person moving from strength. This shift unlocks courage, focus, and perseverance. Strength inside you also means you can face opposition with composure. You can respond rather than react. You can choose patience over panic. You can remain calm in the storm, not because the storm is small, but because the power in you is greater. This composure itself is a form of strength. It is the outward sign of an inward reality. People around you may wonder how you are still standing, still smiling, still moving forward. They may think you are lucky, but you know it is not luck. It is the manifestation of a force that has been there all along, hidden from sight until pressure brought it to the surface. This understanding transforms not only how you handle difficulties, but also how you handle success. When victories come, you do not become arrogant because you know the power came from within, given to you, not manufactured by you. You remain grateful and grounded. This humility preserves and multiplies your strength because it keeps you aligned with its true source. It prevents burnout because you are not trying to conjure up energy from nothing. You are drawing from a well that does not run dry. Strength is not somewhere out there. It already lives inside you. This is not just a motivational phrase, it is a reality that, once embraced, reshapes every decision, every reaction, every goal. It gives you a sense of stability and courage that is not dependent on external circumstances or fleeting emotions. It calls you to look inward not for selfishness, but for recognition of what has already been placed there. It calls you to live from fullness, not emptiness. It calls you to rise, to stand, to move, knowing you are not waiting for something to come to you, but activating what is already present within you. Strength shows up where faith is active, not where it's passive. Many people wait for strength as if it will fall on them out of the sky with no participation on their part. They pray once, feel nothing, and then assume they have been overlooked. But the truth is that power is drawn to movement. Strength manifests in the life of the person who believes enough to act, who speaks and moves in alignment with what they believe even before the evidence appears. Faith is not just a concept in the mind, it is a force that pulls unseen realities into visible form. When faith is passive, it is like a seed locked in a jar. It may have potential, but potential sealed away does nothing. When faith is active, it is like a seed planted in soil and watered. The environment of action triggers growth, and soon you begin to see shoots breaking through the ground. The connection between faith and strength is like the connection between a river and a water wheel. The river may be full and flowing, but if the wheel is not engaged, no power is generated. In the same way, the reservoir of strength may be within you, but it is your active trust that turns the wheel and produces visible power. Active faith speaks differently, acts differently, and endures differently. It is not waiting for perfect conditions to move, but moves and causes conditions to change. It looks at an obstacle and instead of shrinking back, it presses forward knowing that strength is released in the pressing. Active faith also requires your words. The tongue steers the body like a rudder steers a ship. When you speak weakness, you steer toward weakness. When you speak strength, you steer toward strength. Your words create an atmosphere where power can operate. When you declare what you believe instead of what you fear, you build a runway for strength to land. This is why those who activate their faith by confession often experience breakthroughs that others do not. They are not waiting for feelings to shift. They are shaping their reality with words that align with the promise rather than the problem. Another dimension of active faith is action itself. It is one thing to speak. It is another to step. Many hold back, hoping to feel brave before they act, but bravery emerges as you step. The moment you move, you discover that you are not stepping alone. The power meets you at the point of movement. Like the waters of the Jordan River that parted when the priest's feet touched it, strength shows up at the place of contact. It is triggered by obedience, by taking the step that feels risky but is aligned with what you believe. If you never step, you never see the waters divide. Active faith also persists. It does not quit when results are not immediate. It understands that there is often a lag between planting and harvest. Strength grows in the waiting as long as the waiting is filled with expectation, not resignation. Passive waiting drains energy, but active waiting builds it. It keeps declaring, keeps moving, keeps preparing as if the promise is on the way. This posture attracts strength because it signals that you are serious about what you say you believe. Strength shows up where faith is active, because active faith opens the door for courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move despite it. Each time you choose courage, you expand your capacity to carry power. Courage and strength feed each other. One decision of courage releases a new measure of strength, and that new strength fuels greater courage for the next decision. Over time, you become a person who is not shaken by opposition because you have built a pattern of acting on what you believe instead of what you feel. Active faith also shifts your focus from self to source. Passive faith often looks inward at its own inadequacy and becomes paralyzed. Active faith looks at the source of strength and moves because of that awareness. It refuses to calculate only by human resources and instead factors in the unseen help available. This shift produces a boldness that others cannot understand. It is the boldness of someone who knows they are backed up. And that boldness becomes a magnet for strength. It is like plugging into a live current. The power was always there, but you feel it when you connect. Active faith turns adversity into training ground. Challenges become opportunities to draw on inner reserves. Each time you act on faith under pressure, you discover another layer of strength you did not know you had. This discovery reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as fragile and start seeing yourself as resilient. You stop seeing opposition as a sign of weakness and start seeing it as the arena where your strength is proven. This internal shift is one of the greatest benefits of active faith, because once you see yourself differently, you approach life differently. Another reason strength shows up where faith is active is that action breaks the inertia of fear. Fear thrives in stillness and speculation. It grows when you do nothing. But when you move even a small step, fear loses its grip. Movement generates momentum, and momentum draws strength. Like a muscle that feels weak until you begin to use it, your inner power feels dormant until you begin to move. The more you move, the more it flows, and the easier it becomes. Soon what once felt impossible begins to feel natural because you have trained yourself to act out of faith, not hesitation. Active faith also attracts support. People and resources that were invisible begin to appear. Doors you did not see before begin to open. This is not coincidence, it is the ripple effect of movement. When you step out, others are inspired, connections are made, and strength multiplies through partnership. Passive faith isolates and waits for rescue. Active faith builds bridges and creates channels for power to flow. This external reinforcement combines with your internal power to produce results far beyond what you imagine. Strength shows up where faith is active, not where it's passive, because active faith honors the truth of what you already have. It treats the deposit of strength inside you as real. It speaks to it, moves with it, and expects it to manifest. This expectancy is not wishful thinking, it is a settled conviction that energizes your whole being. Your mind becomes sharper, your emotions steadier, your will stronger. You stop rehearsing defeat and start rehearsing victory. Even in small daily choices, you begin to see power at work. Discipline where there was once procrastination. Peace where there was once panic. Perseverance where there was once quitting. Living like this does not mean you will never feel weak or uncertain. It means you refuse to let those feelings dictate your actions. You anchor yourself in what you believe and act accordingly. And in that acting, you draw up the strength that is already present but dormant. Each time you do, you prove to yourself again that power responds to faith in motion. This proof builds a history of victories, and that history becomes a foundation for even greater steps. Your confidence grows, not because life gets easier, but because you know where strength is found and how it is released. Active faith also produces clarity. When you sit passively, everything looks overwhelming. Problems look bigger, paths look blurred, options look confusing. But when you start moving, even if your step is small, light begins to shine on the path. You see what to do next. Strength follows clarity, and clarity follows action. This cycle keeps you progressing instead of stagnating. Over time, you develop an instinct for stepping out even when you cannot see the whole picture, because you have learned that movement itself reveals what you need to know. Strength shows up where faith is active, because active faith positions you to receive. It puts you under the flow. It is like stepping into a stream with a bucket instead of standing on the bank hoping to get wet. The stream is already moving. The power is already flowing. Your job is to step in, to align yourself, to take the posture of someone who expects to be filled. This posture of expectation is magnetic to strength. It draws it, holds it, and multiplies it until it overflows into every area of your life. Every time you speak the promise instead of the problem, you unlock strength. This principle runs like a thread through every moment of victory, because words are not neutral. They build or they break. They plant seeds of faith or seeds of fear. They align you with power or they align you with weakness. The mouth is like a key, and each time you open it, you are turning that key in one direction or another. When pressure comes, when circumstances look impossible, what you allow out of your mouth decides whether you tap into the reservoir of strength already inside you or whether you shut it off. Speaking the promise is not a form of denial. It is a form of agreement. It is choosing to agree with what is true at a higher level rather than what is screaming at you from the surface. When you speak the problem, you rehearse defeat. You give the obstacle power over your emotions, your perspective, your decisions. You paint it larger and larger in your mind until it dominates the horizon. This is why people who constantly talk about how bad things are often feel weaker and weaker. They are feeding the problem with their attention and starving the promise. But when you speak the promise, you reverse that flow. You take the energy away from the problem and give it to the promise. The promise grows bigger in your mind. Your expectation shifts, and suddenly strength begins to rise because your inner environment has changed. This is not magic. It is how you were designed. Your brain responds to your words. Your body responds to your words. Your spirit responds to your words. When you declare what is true instead of what is troubling, you create a chemical, emotional, and spiritual shift inside yourself. Peace starts to replace panic. Courage starts to replace hesitation. Focus starts to replace confusion. In that new atmosphere, the strength that was lying dormant inside you begins to flow out. This is why some people can walk through the same fire others are consumed by and come out unburned. They have trained themselves to speak the promise in the fire, not the fire itself. Speaking the promise also attracts alignment from the outside. People, ideas, and resources are drawn to the atmosphere of faith-filled words. You may not realize it, but the tone of your speech either repels or attracts support. Complaining, grumbling, and negativity push people away. Vision, hope, and strength pull them in. This is why leaders who speak hope in dark times become magnets for help. Their words create a world others want to be part of. The same dynamic works on a personal level. When you speak the promise instead of the problem, you begin to notice open doors, creative ideas, and unexpected allies because you have tuned your perception to see opportunity instead of defeat. Speaking the promise is also a discipline. It does not happen automatically. Under pressure, the natural tendency is to voice what you feel. But power comes when you voice what you believe. That means training your mouth to pause before it speaks, training your mind to reach for the right words, training your heart to hold the right picture. At first it may feel awkward, even forced, but over time it becomes your default. You start to recognize quickly when you are slipping into problem speech and correct yourself. This self-correction is part of unlocking strength because it keeps you aligned. Another dimension of this principle is persistence. It is not enough to speak the promise once. You keep speaking it until your heart believes it more than the problem. You keep speaking it when nothing has changed on the outside, because each time you do, you are building something on the inside. Words are like hammer blows on a rock. The first few may show no effect, but each strike weakens the rock until suddenly it cracks. People often quit just before the breakthrough because they think their words are not working. But each declaration of the promise is moving something, shifting something, building something even when you cannot see it yet. This practice also retrains your imagination. When you constantly speak the problem, you rehearse failure in your mind. When you constantly speak the promise, you rehearse success. Your imagination becomes a partner instead of an enemy. You begin to see yourself overcoming, achieving, standing strong. This inner picture fuels your outer actions. You make decisions as if you are going to succeed because you already see it in your mind. That confidence draws strength up from deep places and infuses it into everything you do. Speaking the promise instead of the problem also guards your heart. The heart is like soil. Whatever you plant in it grows. If you plant words of fear, doubt, and defeat, you harvest anxiety and weakness. If you plant words of faith, hope, and truth, you harvest peace and strength. Guarding your heart is not just about avoiding negative people or situations. It is about guarding what comes out of your own mouth. Your words are the seeds you sow in your own heart. Being intentional about those seeds is how you create an inner garden of strength. This principle is especially powerful in moments of crisis. When everything is shaking, when bad news arrives, when you feel blindsided, your first words matter. They set the direction. They either open the door to panic or they open the door to power. Training yourself to speak the promise as a reflex gives you a head start in the battle. It stops the downward spiral before it begins. It keeps you anchored in the truth while the storm passes over. In that anchoring, strength flows like a river even while circumstances look dry. It is also important to realize that speaking the promise does not mean you ignore facts. It means you refuse to let facts have the final word. You acknowledge reality, but you also acknowledge a higher reality. For example, you may acknowledge that you feel weak, but you speak that you are strong. You may acknowledge that you have a challenge, but you speak that you are overcoming it. This dual awareness keeps you honest but not hopeless. It keeps you grounded but not trapped. It keeps you strong in the face of what would otherwise crush you. Another outcome of consistently speaking the promise is that it creates a legacy. People around you, especially those younger or weaker, hear your words and learn from them. They see how you respond to pressure and they pick up your habits. Your words become a model. In this way, you are not only unlocking strength for yourself, but teaching others how to unlock it for themselves. Your home, your workplace, your community becomes a place where promises are spoken more than problems, and the atmosphere of that place shifts accordingly. Strength multiplies across relationships because words ripple outward. The more you practice this principle, the quicker you notice the difference between atmospheres. You walk into a room full of problem talk and feel drained. You walk into a room full of promise talk and feel energized. You begin to realize you have the power to change the atmosphere of any room you enter simply by what you choose to speak. You may not control others' words, but you control your own. Each time you open your mouth, you are either releasing weakness or releasing strength. Choosing the promise is choosing strength. Speaking the promise also cultivates gratitude. When you rehearse what is true and good and possible, your heart becomes thankful instead of bitter. Gratitude itself is a form of strength because it shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have. It lifts your perspective and lightens your spirit. This uplift translates into endurance. You can carry more, last longer, push further because your inner atmosphere is lighter. Many underestimate how much their inner climate affects their outer stamina. Words are the thermostat of that climate. In practice, this means making deliberate choices every day. It might look like writing down the promises you believe before your day starts. It might look like replacing complaints with declarations. It might look like speaking aloud to yourself in the car or in the mirror. The method is less important than the consistency. Each time you do it, you are building a habit of strength. Each time you do it, you are unlocking a little more of what is already inside you. Over time, the cumulative effect is massive. Every time you speak the promise instead of the problem, you unlock strength. You activate the power that was lying dormant. You change the atmosphere around you and inside you. You draw support, you build resilience, you retrain your imagination. You guard your heart, you anchor yourself in truth. You shape your destiny one word at a time. This is not hype or wishful thinking. It is the power of alignment, the power of agreement, the power of using your voice as a tool rather than a weapon against yourself. Each word is a step, and each step takes you deeper into the strength you already possess. Strength's address is where obedience meets courage and confession meets action. It is not a random place and it is not a mystery. It is a meeting point. Strength does not simply appear in the life of someone who knows the right ideas, but never moves on them. It is unlocked when a person hears what is right, and then chooses to do it even when it is uncomfortable. Obedience on its own can become rigid routine. Courage on its own can become reckless impulse. But when obedience meets courage, there is power. It is one thing to know what should be done. It is another thing to step out and do it even while feeling fear. That meeting point between knowing and doing, between trembling and stepping, is where strength reveals itself. Every time a person chooses obedience in the face of pressure, they are planting a seed for strength to grow. Every time they add courage to that obedience, they water that seed. At first it may look small and hidden, but inside it is growing roots that will hold them steady when the wind blows. Obedience without courage may keep you safe, but it will also keep you small. Courage without obedience may make you bold, but it will also make you unstable. The blending of the two forms a foundation that can hold the weight of great responsibility. Strength lives at that foundation. Confession meeting action is a similar principle. Confession without action becomes empty talk. Action without confession can become aimless striving. But when you say with your mouth what you believe, and then take steps that match those words, you create alignment. That alignment is like an electrical circuit closing. Once it is closed, power flows. As long as it stays open, the current cannot pass. Many people speak inspiring words, but never back them with movement. They wonder why nothing changes. Others work hard, but constantly speak defeat. They wonder why their effort seems powerless. Strength shows up when your mouth and your feet agree. This meeting place is also where integrity is forged. To obey what you know to be right takes integrity. To act on what you confess takes integrity. Each act of integrity strengthens your inner core. The stronger that core, the more you can carry without collapsing. This is why some people appear to handle pressure with ease. They have built, often in private, the habit of aligning obedience with courage and confession with action. By the time the public test arrives, the inner structure is already strong. At the point where obedience meets courage, fear begins to lose its hold. Fear thrives on hesitation. It whispers that you are not ready, not qualified, not able. It magnifies the risks and hides the rewards. But each time you step anyway, you discover that fear was lying. You discover that the ground holds when you walk on it. This discovery adds another layer of strength. Soon the same step that once made you tremble feels natural. Courage grows because strength grows, and strength grows because courage was exercised in obedience. This is also the place where character deepens. Obedience shapes your values. Courage shapes your resolve. Confession shapes your focus. Action shapes your habits. Altogether they shape your life. A life shaped in this way becomes unshakable, not because it avoids storms, but because it has been built with deep pilings driven into bedrock. When storms come, such a life may sway, but it does not fall. Strength resides in that hidden construction and shows itself when needed. Another aspect of this meeting point is timing. Often you will feel the nudge to act before you feel ready. The natural mind wants to wait until courage shows up before obeying. But courage rarely precedes obedience. It usually appears as you obey. Like a muscle warming up during movement, courage flows as you step. Waiting for courage before acting often results in paralysis. Acting in obedience even while trembling results in power. This is why people who consistently take small steps of obedience become stronger over time. They are continually triggering the flow of courage and building their capacity for strength. When confession meets action, the same principle applies. You may begin speaking words of faith before you feel them. You may take actions that seem small compared to your declaration. But each small act reinforces the words, and each word empowers the act. Over time the gap closes, and what you speak and what you do become one. This oneness is a magnet for strength. It is like tuning an instrument until the notes resonate. Once it is in tune, the sound is clear and powerful. Once your confession and your action are in tune, your life resonates with strength. Strencht's address at this intersection also brings clarity. When you simply think about what you should do, everything feels cloudy. When you step out in obedience with courage, the fog begins to lift. Each act of alignment turns on another light. Soon you can see more of the path. This clarity itself becomes a form of strength because it reduces the energy wasted on confusion. You are no longer pulled in 10 directions, you are moving with focus. Focus concentrates your power like a lens concentrates light. This principle also transforms setbacks. When you live at the place where obedience meets courage and confession meets action, even your failures become training. You learn quickly, adjust, and move forward stronger. Because your identity is tied to alignment rather than outcome, a setback does not shatter you. You simply return to the meeting place and step again. Each time you do, your resilience increases. This resilience is a hallmark of true strength. It is not brittle. It can bend without breaking. Living from this place also affects how others see you. People are drawn to authenticity. They sense when someone's words and actions match. They respect courage combined with humility. They trust obedience combined with boldness. This trust opens doors and creates influence. Influence itself amplifies strength because it allows you to accomplish more through partnership than you could alone. But the foundation remains the same: inner alignment between knowing, saying, and doing. It is worth noticing that this address is internal before it is external. You do not need perfect conditions to live here. You do not need everyone to approve. You do not need all the answers. You simply need to respond to what you already know, speak what you already believe, and act on what you already confess. Each time you do, you reinforce the pattern. Each time you reinforce the pattern, strength becomes more readily available. Eventually it becomes your instinct. You no longer wrestle as long with decisions. Your default is to obey with courage and to back your confession with action. This place where obedience meets courage and confession meets action is also where vision turns into reality. Many people have dreams that never materialize because they live in the gap. They know what they want but will not obey the first instruction. They talk about what they believe but never move toward it. The gap drains their strength and feeds their frustration. Closing the gap by stepping out, by aligning words with deeds, by mixing obedience with courage, releases a surge of energy. Suddenly what felt impossible begins to move, because power flows through a closed circuit. When you live at this address, you also discover a new level of peace. Inner conflict is exhausting. Saying one thing and doing another, knowing one thing and obeying another drains energy. Alignment ends the war inside, peace returns. This peace is not passive, it is a stable platform for powerful action. It is the calm center from which bold moves can be launched. People who carry this peace often look fearless because they are not fragmented. Their inner agreement gives them outer composure. Strength at this meeting point is not a one-time event, it is a continuous flow. Each day brings new opportunities to align obedience with courage and confession with action. Each day you choose, and each choice builds on the last. Over time you construct an inner address so solid that strength knows exactly where to show up. It finds you there because you have built a habit of meeting it there. You have created a familiar landing strip for power, and power lands where it is welcome and expected. When you choose to live from heaven's bank, you are stepping into an entirely different economy of thought and provision. It is not about physical currency, but about a mindset and a flow. Most people live as though their only supply is what they can see in their accounts, what they can earn with their hands, or what someone else can give them. That is a limited bank with limited hours and limited deposits. Heaven's bank, by contrast, is never closed. It is not subject to recessions, inflation, or shortages. It operates on principles of trust, sowing, giving, and receiving that transcend natural systems. To draw from it, you do not fill out paperwork or stand in a queue. You align your thinking and your speaking with its reality. You begin to see your life not as a scramble for scarcity, but as an overflow of abundance. Living from heaven's bank begins with awareness. You realize that the resources of wisdom, peace, ideas, favor, and even tangible provision are not locked in some faraway vault, but available to you through faith. This is not wishful thinking, but a shift in source. Instead of seeing your employer, your business, your customers, or your talents as the source, you see them as channels. The source is higher, inexhaustible, and not tied to one channel. When one channel closes, another opens because the supply is not from the channel. This awareness breaks fear because fear feeds on the belief that supply is scarce. Once you know it is not scarce, your decisions change. You become generous where you were once stingy, bold where you were once hesitant, calm where you were once anxious. Another element of living from heaven's bank is learning the language of deposits and withdrawals. In a natural bank, you deposit money by physically placing it into an account. In heaven's bank, you deposit through obedience, trust, generosity, and right speaking. Every time you forgive someone, you make a deposit of peace. Every time you give without expecting return, you make a deposit of blessing. Every time you choose to believe rather than fear, you make a deposit of faith. These deposits grow, compound, and are always accessible. Withdrawals happen when you draw on those stored realities in time of need. You can draw peace when circumstances are chaotic, wisdom when you face decisions, favor when you need opportunity. You are not trying to pull something from emptiness, but from an account that already holds what you need. Living from heaven's bank also means operating on its principles rather than the world's. In the world system, holding tightly seems wise. In heaven's bank, giving is what multiplies. In the world system, fear of loss drives decisions. In heaven's bank, trust in abundance drives decisions. In the world system, status comes from accumulation. In heaven's bank, influence flows from service. This reversal is not intuitive at first. It requires practice and a willingness to go against the grain. But each time you do, you discover that the system works. You give and somehow more flows to you. You forgive and find your heart lighter. You release and discover doors opening. This is not magic but principle. Just as gravity works whether you understand it or not, these principles work when engaged. Drawing from heaven's bank changes how you see work. You no longer see work as your only lifeline, but as one of many channels through which supply flows. You approach it with excellence but not desperation. Because your identity is not tied to the paycheck, you can make decisions with integrity rather than fear. You can walk away from toxic opportunities because you trust that supply does not end there. This freedom often leads to greater creativity and better results because you are not squeezed by anxiety. Ideas flow more easily when you are not in survival mode. Opportunities appear because people sense your steadiness. Heaven's bank is not only about receiving more, but about becoming more in how you operate. Another aspect is vision. When you live from scarcity, you plan small, dream small, and act small because you are always measuring your resources before you start. When you live from heaven's bank, you plan, dream, and act based on a higher supply. You still use wisdom, but you are not bound by what you see in your account at the moment. This allows you to step into assignments bigger than your current capacity, because you trust that provision flows with purpose. This shift unlocks potential that remains dormant under a scarcity mindset. Many ideas die not because they are impossible, but because they were never attempted due to fear of lack. Heaven's bank gives you the confidence to begin. Living from heaven's bank also brings peace to relationships. When you believe that love, respect, and opportunity are limited, you compete and compare. You see others as threats to your share. But when you know that heaven's supply is limitless, you can celebrate others without envy. You can bless rather than undermine. You can collaborate rather than compete. This relational generosity often circles back to you as unexpected favor. People are drawn to those who are not clutching and grasping. This creates networks of trust that open even more channels for the flow of heaven's bank into your life. Your words become crucial in this way of living. Words are like checks you write on your account. Speaking lack, defeat, and fear writes checks against scarcity. Speaking abundance, faith, and gratitude writes checks against heaven's bank. Over time, your words train your mind and set your expectations. You start to look for supply instead of shortage, for doors instead of walls. This expectation shapes your perception, and perception shapes your reality. You notice opportunities you once ignored. You take steps you once feared. This is how heaven's bank moves from theory to experience. Another key is stewardship. Living from heaven's bank does not mean reckless spending or assuming you can do anything without discipline. It means managing well what flows to you, knowing that faithful stewardship invites more. You track, plan, and prioritize, but you do so from a place of trust, not panic. Because you are not grasping, you can allocate resources toward what matters most rather than what feels urgent. This focus multiplies impact. You become a conduit rather than a container. And conduits are always kept full because they are always in use. Gratitude is also a powerful connector to heaven's bank. Gratitude acknowledges the source. It shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have, creating an atmosphere where more can flow. Complaining clogs the flow because it centers on scarcity. Gratitude unclogs it because it centers on abundance. Each time you pause to give thanks, you are, in a sense, checking your balance and reminding yourself that the account is full. This habit stabilizes your emotions and strengthens your faith, especially in seasons when outward circumstances look thin. Living from heaven's bank affects your sense of timing as well. In the natural system, timing is often about rushing to secure your portion before it runs out. In heaven's bank, timing is about trust. You learn to act promptly when prompted, but also to wait without anxiety when the moment is not yet. This rhythm prevents burnout. It also positions you to receive at the right time rather than forcing something prematurely. Because you know the supply is not going away, you can move with patience and precision instead of panic. This way of living also influences your identity. Scarcity whispers that you are small, undeserving, always behind. Heaven's bank tells you that you are a child of abundance, a steward of resources, a partner in a greater flow. This identity shapes your posture. You walk differently, think differently, and relate differently. People notice this difference even if they cannot name it. They see confidence without arrogance, generosity without calculation, peace without passivity. These qualities are the fruit of living from a higher source in practice. Drawing from heaven's bank is often about small daily choices rather than dramatic leaps. It is choosing to give a little when you feel like hoarding. It is speaking hope when you feel discouraged. It is taking the next step of faith when the path ahead is not fully visible. Each small choice reinforces the flow. Each small act signals to heaven's bank that you are aligned with its principles. Over time, the flow becomes more natural, and the evidence more visible. You find yourself supported in ways you could not have orchestrated, equipped with wisdom you did not study for, strengthened with peace you did not manufacture. Finally, living from heaven's bank creates legacy. The mindset and habits you develop influence those around you. Children, students, employees, or friends who watch you will pick up the cues of abundance or scarcity. When they see you operate from trust and generosity, they learn to do the same. This multiplies the impact far beyond your own life. It also ensures that the flow does not stop with you, but continues through those you have influenced. In this way, heaven's bank is not just a personal resource, but a community one, expanding its reach wherever its principles are practiced.